21 miles. That is the distance between a functioning global economy and a scorched earth collapse. The Strait of Hormuz is no longer just a shipping lane. It is a detonating cord. As you watch this, the world's most vital oil artery has been functionally severed. Not by a formal blockade, but by a shadow war of drones, AI-guided missiles, and an insurance blackout that has turned the Gulf into a no-go zone. The fuse has been lit. One miscalculation, one accidental strike, and these 21 miles of water become the front line of World War III. This is the reality of the 2026 crisis. Most people think a blockade requires a massive fleet of warships. They're wrong. In 2026, the blockade is invisible, and it's being enforced by lawyers and algorithms. The moment the first missiles flew this year, the global insurance market hit the kill switch. War risk premiums didn't just rise, they exploded by 6,000%. For a standard tanker, insurance alone now costs over $7 million per trip. For most of the world's fleet, the math of trade simply stopped working. But it's not just the money, it's the phantom threat. The days of tracking an enemy fleet on radar are over. Today, the danger comes from the swarm. Hundreds of low-cost, disposable drone boats and kamikaze UAVs hidden in limestone caves along the jagged coastline. We've seen the results. Tankers set ablaze not by torpedoes, but by plastic drones that cost less than a used car. The U.S. Fifth Fleet, once the undisputed master of these waters, is facing a mathematical nightmare, firing $2 million interceptors to stop $20,000 drones. It is a war of attrition, where the side with the most expensive toys is the one losing. The strait isn't closed because of a line of ships. It's closed because it is now a financial and tactical suicide mission. To understand why 2026 is so much more dangerous than any conflict before it, we have to look at the ghost of the board. In 1988, during Operation Praying Mantis, the U.S. Navy decimated half of Iran's fleet in a single day. Back then, if you sank the ships, you won the war. But the players have learned. Today's strategy is anti-access area denial. The enemy has traded high-value targets for thousands of small, smart, and cheap assets. In the past, you could protect a carrier with a bubble of defense. In 2026, we've seen those bubbles popped. Drones have successfully struck radar installations inside supposedly impenetrable zones. If the nerve center of a superpower isn't safe, no commercial tanker stands a chance. This is the 20% history lesson that matters. In 1988, the tension led to the tragic downing of a civilian airline because of a radar error. Today, the room for error is zero. We aren't just looking at ships versus ships. We're looking at a world where a single autonomous glitch can trigger a retaliatory strike on nuclear facilities or regional power grids. The board stays the same, but the weapons have outpaced our ability to control them. We are now standing on the final rungs of the escalation ladder. It starts with the infrastructure war. If the U.S. and its allies follow through on ultimatums to obliterate coastal batteries, the retaliation won't stay in the water. Tehran's doctrine is clear. If we go dark, everyone goes dark. We are looking at potential strikes on desalination plants across the Gulf. If those go offline, the Middle East doesn't just lose oil, it loses its drinking water. Millions of people displaced in a matter of days. Then look at the China factor. As the world's largest oil importer, Beijing cannot survive a long-term closure of Hormuz. While they've built a green economy, they still run on the oil that passes through these 21 miles. If they move their own fleet end to police the water alongside a strike-ready U.S. carrier group, we are one nervous sonar operator away from a direct clash between nuclear superpowers. Finally, there is the nuclear shadow. When a regional power feels its regime is facing total collapse from external strikes, the last move isn't a blockade. It's a scorched earth policy that could leave the global energy supply in a decade-long depression. This is the path to World War III, and it all runs through a single, narrow waterway. So where does this end? We are currently facing the impossible choice. If the West steps back and allows the strait to remain a gray zone of chaos, global inflation turns into a permanent depression. The just-in-time supply chain that feeds your city dies in these 21 miles of water. But if they step forward and try to force the strait open, they enter a swarm war that could see $1 billion supercarrier crippled by 1,000 small stings. There is no surgical solution here. Every move toward peace looks like an invitation for further escalation. 21 miles. It's a distance you could drive in 20 minutes, but it has become the most expensive graveyard on Earth. The question isn't whether a war can start here. The question is, in a world of autonomous weapons and desperate superpowers, does anyone actually have the power to stop it? If you want to understand the hidden strategies and the historical ghosts driving the 2026 crisis, you need to be watching the board. Subscribe to Past Feenix to see how ancient tactics are being reborn in the age of AI. To see how China is already moving to outsmart this exact trap, watch our deep dive on their energy independence strategy right here. The board is moving. Stay vigilant.